Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 161. We're going to talk about the rule of law. I guess you've seen the images of, or in the videos of the riots going on in England. Kind of reminds me, and it's reminiscent of all the BLM riots that we saw here in the United States. And there's just basically a lot of angry people at each other because of the lack of law, the rule of law. And makes you wonder, are there any laws over there? There's clearly a lot of violence. People who are carrying out the violence are not punished. Uh, and so what we see is the destruction of law. So basically, people just committing acts of violence, committing crimes, and there's no punishment. And the longer that this continues, the law is undermined, or even the idea of law and justice. So what I saw today was people who had posted on social media video of the riots. They were arrested. At the same time, people uh, who stabbed or committed other acts of violence, they are let free. And so it's because of unpunished crime that you see protests, and the protests lead to riots carried out by some people who just really like violence. And then you see pushback people, um, because of all the emotion and propaganda. You see basically gangs of people engaging in violence. It's kind of crazy. And it's hard to get a clear picture of what's going on, primarily because the news is deliberately obfuscating, confusing, taking us aside, and not giving us a clear picture of what's going on. So, all of this is the evidence of the lack of law, hypocrisy, double standards. So, what is the logic of letting a lot of people, many of whom are criminals, right? So, a lot of the prisons in South America, I know, are empty, right? I mean, they were given a choice: go to America or stay in prison. And so basically, most of them will take the trip to America. And so you have all of these criminals coming in, governments then feeding them, alienating their own citizens, using taxes to benefit illegals, giving them all this free stuff. It's kind of mind-boggling. I don't know how to make any sense of it. I mean, what is the logic of impoverishing your own population, your own citizens? What's the logic of destroying the traditions of your society, which built the kind of society that everyone else wants to get into and plunder? What's the logic of law enforcement enforcing these hypocritical laws, arresting people for social media posts? Really? Um, Now, obviously, not all law enforcement is like this, it's unfortunate, but I always like to say that not all law enforcement. My local police community, for whom I am a chaplain, their whole agenda is de-escalation. Their whole thing is, how do you avoid escalation, and is there a way to, not have confrontations? But as a we know for a fact that this is not necessarily true. In the local large city next to us, they had to lower the standards for police officers. It used to be, I don't know, something like a 10th grade education, maybe level of education in order to be a police officer. And now it's down to 7th grade level of education. So you see this death spiral of how you're not going to get the kind of police that you need, or is it the kind of police that you want, right? People who will just simply get off on having that authority and therefore totally willing to enforce unconstitutional, unjust laws. I mean, who goes along with all of this? Who benefits from this kind of chaos? And I don't have any answers. It's just something that I just it's just hard for me to get my head around it. Why destroy your own country? And I know there's the whole World Economic Forum, there's the whole globalist agenda and everything, but it still doesn't make any sense. I mean, I mean, do you have to? This is the only route. This is the only way to be able to have what you want, murder and kill as many people as possible. It just doesn't seem that doesn't seem to be it. There has to be more. Maybe it's the part of me, the rational part of me, that wants to believe that this can't be everything. So, I mean, I recognize that culture evolves. Um, I have been in the middle of it myself. So, sure, culture evolves. Culture is influenced by encounters with other people with different cultural values. But we're not talking about some twisted form of multiculturalism. I mean, I never really liked the idea of multiculturalism. It's a fiction. It's one of those academic theories for people who want to get tenure in the university. But we're not talking about, different cultures somehow getting along with each other and pretending to learn about each other. We're not talking about that any longer. We're talking about straight up cultural eradication, right? You're trying to get rid of Western society. It's kind of that's what it looks like anyway. So lawlessness, ever changing double standards, which is all fueled by cheap money, right? So all of this is made possible. This lawlessness is made possible because the Federal Reserve prints dollars, and because it is able to print as many as it wants. Now there's a process, right, where they create reserves, and then from the reserves, and they distribute it to banks, and banks are then now able to make loans, etc. But I don't know all the little tweaks and details, which results in things like um, the yen carry trade, and how that is unraveling right now, or people are trying to figure out what to do next with all of the yen that they have, the Japanese central bank currency. But it's with all of this money printing that makes things like the yen carry trade possible. It's also one thing that we have to remember is that the dollar used to be backed by gold, and so therefore became the world's reserve currency. And so basically, a lot of the other fiat currency in the world is based on the dollar. So because of the dollar, they say that it's a dollar derivative, a derivative of the dollar, or it is derived from the dollar. And so England is affected by the United States as well. And it's because of all this money printing that we have here in the United States, it affects England. Right. And so what we're seeing in England is a result of the easy money policy that we have here in the United States. It's sort of like we have a drug war here, and so it affects Mexico and South America with drug production, right? So whatever happens here, it affects other countries. And so in the United States, we have protests, we have BLM riots, we have Antifa riots, et cetera. We have illegal immigrants coming to this country. We have a bloated military, which from the videos that I've seen are woefully prepared to fight against a first world army, right? I mean, it's one thing to fight against an army that has really no military structure and modern equipment, and the United States struggled with that with those military forces. But now to then go up against a first world army, I don't know. I think things will be different. I think a lot of people are in for a very rude awakening. And because of the easy money policy, we have law enforcement doing what it does. If you didn't have all of this money printing, you wouldn't have a DEA, you wouldn't have a drug war, you wouldn't have misallocation of police resources to fighting gang violence, instead of following up on crime, protecting the community. So with money printing, not be there can't be a rule of law. So if you want a rule of law, then you can't have easy money policy. You can't have a central bank that is constantly printing money. Money erodes the moral values of society, right? Because it's through this endless money printing, trillions and trillions of dollars, that theoretically you can pay for revolutions, insurrections, coups in multiple countries all at the same time. In fact, you can bribe an entire country by simply paying for all of their bills, giving them a monthly stipend. I mean, you can do this, right? The standard of living in the United States is such that compared to other countries, it's a lot less, and so you can literally pay everyone to be on your side. With all this money printing, you can fund multiple wars. You can fund an educational system which does not educate. People become ignorant of the most basic economic principles. I saw this post where it said a myth that has to be eradicated is that if you tax billionaires, they won't create jobs, right? What it do you? It's just so frustrating, maddening to see so much idiocy that to unpack it requires a longish explanation, but no one has the patience to listen to that explanation, right? Just to put it simply, you take all of the billionaires' wealth and you would in the United States, and you would not be able to fund the US government for more than a few months, right? 8 months, I think. Last time I checked, it was 8, so it's probably 7 by now. And then what do you do after that? After you've plundered all the billionaires, where are you going to get your money now? Well, you're going to go after the millionaires, and after that, then the hundredaires, the thousandaires, and then everyone is poor. But then you have no production. You can't make anything, and so to come back from that is going to require quite a bit of time. With all this money printing, you can elect politicians who will change the laws as they are thumbing their nose at the laws, right? So everyone who is elected here in the United States, they have to swear an oath of office to uphold the Constitution, and very few of them do. And all the money printing allows this to happen. I mean, think about even AIPAC, the Jewish lobbying group here in the United States. I mean, they're basically funded by US tax dollars. And so money is sent to Israel. Israel sends a lot of it back to fuel all of the lobbying here. That, with all of the donations of other people here in the United States, they basically can control the US government. Even Eisenhower, I saw a video where Eisenhower was basically saying that, or excuse me, Nixon was saying that U.S. U.S. is basically controlled by the interests of Israel. I mean, you saw Thomas Massie say that pretty much everyone in Congress, with a couple of exceptions, including himself, has a representative of AIPAC working in their office to inform AIPAC how that politician is voting. And if they don't vote in the way that is acceptable to AIPAC, they run a candidate against that person. And what we saw is that two people of the squad, the so-called squad, has been, knocked out of Congress. Now, as much as I don't like them, the fact that they were knocked out by people who are supported by the Jewish lobby, or Israeli lobby, excuse me, is interesting, right? And I saw Daniel McAdams, he posted that, this is nothing to celebrate, that they are being knocked out by entities that are backed by foreign powers, which is basically what a lot of people were accusing Trump of, so that's layers of hypocrisy there. And with all this money printing, you can even put up one of the most despicable candidates and not worry about losing, right? I mean, Harris is not, Michael Malice calls her wine mom. I mean, there's not a whole lot appealing about her. But you can basically pay for her entire campaign, with all of these inflated dollars. I saw a video where she was somewhere in the Midwest, and It was packed, like the stadium was packed. And the first thing that went through my head was, wow, either they really like her or there was a really uh, popular musical act that performed before she took the stage, just like the way she did it in Atlanta, right? You hire someone that everyone in that area really likes, everyone shows up for that free concert, and then you hit them with the political speech. But of course, you know, the video is full of all these people coming to see Harris, right? You don't mention the musical number that performed before her. So who had the money to be able to do the renting and paying the musical acts, etc.? You know, so all of that is a result of easy money policy. And so you got to wonder if the game is already rigged so deeply this way, right? Their pockets are so deep to pay off so many different people to grease the wheels to turn their way. I mean, really, what would be the solution? Because it's not going to be an election, right? I mean, as much as this person is despicable, you can see the confidence, right? You can see that look in their eye, that confidence, which basically tells them, yeah, they're going to win, right? Gerald Celente even said that her VP pick, was it Walls or something like that, uh, was a wise choice. It will help her to win even bigger, right? And so the one thing about Gerald Celente that I really respect is that he knows how the game is played. You know, I don't quite grasp all of it, only because I don't know all of the players that are there. But the fact that they can somehow sneak in all these extra votes, I mean, the election's in the bag. The only thing that would prevent them, he adds, is, you know, a crashing economy, a really crashing economy that affects a lot of people. That would probably make it so she doesn't win. But she's the perfect presidential candidate, right? I mean, she's know nothing, absolute idiot, and will only say what she is told to say. She's the perfect president. So one has got to wonder if all of this is happening because of money printing, right? A corrupt central bank, right? You can't have the rule of law. So one's got to wonder, is the solution an economic collapse, right? A sovereign debt crisis? Is that the only way out? Right? Because secession doesn't seem to be possible. You can't secede. I want to secede from this, you know, from this state. It's going crazy, but I don't think it's possible. They'll come after you. But if the dollar means nothing, if there is some sort of uh, devaluation of the dollar, then people who rely on government dollars for their livelihood, what are they going to do? Where they need to get something, generate revenue. Their jobs will most likely no longer exist. A lot of businesses will have to close. People won't have jobs. So what do you do then? You know, maybe that's the only thing that you can that can happen that will bring all this to an end. You know, my hope is that somehow the easy money era will end, and when that happens, then people will see value uh, where it actually is, right? Remember, if you can fund an activity, the value will be artificial. It will look like it's a valued activity that a lot of people are doing it, but it only exists because of government funding. And so once all of that goes away, then what's left? Only the essentials, the things that are actually important to everyone, not, you know, funding ideas which are just goes against the natural order, what, you know, what is even naturally possible. You know, all of that will have to come to an end, and perhaps then people will remember their humanity, will remember that cooperation is better than violence, that will remember what peace and happiness was, maybe even start to rebuild the family and rebuild society for what it was. I don't know. Maybe that's too much of a dream, but it's the only way that I can keep my head together in the face of all this chaos and just craziness. Well, anyway, hopefully those subjective thoughts were a little bit relating to what you were thinking about. Uh, And I'll talk to you next time.